guys, welcome to my first ASMR video. I am Ioan. Well, my name is Ioan. And I am launching this channel as Politics ASMR. I'm a Politics and International Relations student at university, and I really like ASMR, and I thought, why not merge the two and make a channel. So in this channel we're basically going to go through different books and articles related to politics and analysing them with like an ASMR lens. I think that's a good way of putting it. Today we are going through chapter 1 of Samuel Huntington's Clash of Civilizations. Now this comes up quite a lot in politics courses, usually to disagree against, and also to be clear, I'm not gonna have a bias on anything. Hopefully not. I'm not trying to push an agenda, I'm trying to stay neutral, like anyone who studies politics should really. But yeah, hopefully you like it, and hopefully I can teach you something. So, Samuel Huntington's Clash of Civilizations, the chapter 1 is called The New Era in World Politics. Its context is that it was written right after the Cold War. So, the Cold War just ended. It was written in like the 90s. I think it was 93, the article, but then it was published separately as a book, which is what we're going to be looking at. But that's the context that it was put. So it was after the Cold War, and let's just say the Americans were looking for an enemy to focus on after the fall of the Soviet Union, and many see this as a way of sort of pushing a policy. And yeah, let's just get into it. So Huntington gives 5 distinct skeletons. Huntington tells us sort of his 5 main things that he looks at in the book. So the first is the multipolar and multi-civilizational world. For the first time in history, global politics became multipolar and multi-civilizational. During the Cold War, it was bipolar, so there were 2 sides like a magnet. Before that, it was a multipolar system within Western civilization. But now, others were standing up. Modernization, Huntington argued, was not the same as westernization. No. You can have a laptop, a jet engine, and a stock market without becoming Western. I'm not very good at this, guys. Second is the shifting of the balance of power. The West is declining in its relative influence, which is a slow tectonic shift. While the West fades, the Asian civilizations are expanding their military and economic strength. He says Islam is undergoing a demographic explosion that destabilizes its neighbors. Non-Western cultures are no longer looking for the West for answers. They are reaffirming the value of their own traditions. Third, the emerging civilization-based order. The West, so societies that share cultural affinities, are cooperating with each other. They are grouping themselves around core states. Like magnets, countries are being pulled towards the civilization they belong to. Efforts to move from one civilization to the other, like Turkey or Mexico, are described as unsuccessful and fraught with tension. The fourth is the universalist pretensions of the West. This is a point of friction. The West believes Muslims generate king-country rallying. When one group fights, their cousins from the same civilization rally to their side. The fifth is the survival of the West. The survival of the Western civilization depends on Americans and Europeans reaffirming their unique identity. The West should stop trying to make the rest of the world Western and instead focus on preserving their own unique heritage. Avoidance of global war of civilizations depends on leaders accepting that the world is now multi-civilizational. And then he presents a map of the different civilizations that he covers, and the different civilizations within the world at the time. Then he quotes William James, who said that without a conceptual framework, the world is just a blooming, buzzing confusion. To act effectively, we need a map of reality. At first, he looked at the map during the Cold War. For 40 years, there was a simple map. For him, it was the free world versus the communist world. It was a useful map. It helped to understand where to go and who to fear. But when the Berlin Wall fell, the map became obsolete overnight, and suddenly the world was filled with new maps. Huntington critiques 4 of them. We should listen to his critiques carefully. So the competing maps he looks at, the first one is the one world, which is euphoria and harmony. This was the map that was pushed by Francis Fukuyama in The End of History, which suggested that since communism had failed, Western liberal democracy had won forever. The world would become one happy, harmonious place. Huntington whispers a rebuttal. He believes that the map was an illusion, that it was born of a moment of euphoria. He reminded us that after World War One, people said it was the war to end all wars. And that after World War II, Roosevelt promised an end to the system of unilateral action. However, both times, the harmony was a ghost. Within 5 years of the Berlin Wall falling, the word genocide was heard more often than during the entire Cold War. The one world map is too divorced from reality to be helpful and useful. Map number 2. The two worlds, us versus them. This is the bifurcation map. North versus South, rich versus poor, Orient versus Occident. Huntington admits that this map is tempting, because we love to divide the world into us and them. But he argues it is still too simple. That's probably too loud. The non-West is not a unit. What does a Japanese businessman have in common with a Sudanese farmer or a Russian monk, other than the fact that they aren't Western? Nothing, according to Huntington. The East-West dichotomy is a myth created by the West. It assumes that the West is in the center and everyone else is just the rest. It ignores the profound differences between Islamic, Cynic, and Hindu civilizations. Now the third map is the realist map, which is the states map, and at the time this was 184 states, which is now more. It assumes that the nation state is the only actor that matters, that states are like billiard balls knocking into each other, always seeking power and security. Huntington respects this map. He believes it's a good starting point, but that it has a blind spot. It assumes that every state sees its interest in the same way. It doesn't explain why states choose certain allies over others. If power was all that mattered, Western because of against the mass. Why? According to Huntington, this was because of shared values. Culture shapes how states define their interests. We don't fear power, we fear threatening power. And we are less likely to feel threatened by people we think we understand. Now the fourth map was the map of failed states and anarchy. It's the world of out of control. Brzezinski. It sees only the breakdown of authority, tribal massacres, and terrorism. Huntington said that this map is too close to reality. It's like a map that shows every pothole but no roads. It gives us no way to order events or predict the future. The world may be chaotic, but it's not without order. There are patterns in the chaos, and those patterns are cultural, according to Huntington. So he then presents his own map, the civilizational map, and he argues that it is the most parsimonious. It is simple enough to understand, but complex enough to explain the most important events. It builds on other maps. It acknowledges that the world is to the west against the rest, but also acknowledges that the rest is many. It acknowledges that states are the primary actors, but says their behavior is driven by culture. To prove this, he gives us a case study. This is the main case study, Russia and Ukraine. A realist like John Mersheimer looks at Russia and Ukraine and sees two states sharing a long, unprotected border. Bear in mind that this is what he wrote at the time, which was in the 90s. And Mersheimer predicts that they will inevitably fall into security competition. Or will they? He worries about war. He might even suggest Ukraine should keep nuclear weapons that deter Russia. Side eye. But Huntington's civilizational map looks at the same terrain and sees something else. He sees the fault line that has existed for centuries. He sees the Orthodox Eastern Ukraine, which is culturally and linguistically tied to Russia. And he says the Uniate Western Ukraine, which is more European and Catholic aligned. Because of these cultural links, Huntington argues that a full-scale state-on-state war is less likely than the realist suggests. Clearly he wasn't around when 2022 and 2014 occurred. Instead, he predicts that the real danger is Ukraine splitting in half, which, technically could be. He suggests that the shared culture between Russians and Ukrainians would make a war between them unusual in a civilizational sense. He argues that the West should focus on maintaining Ukrainian unity while respecting the deep cultural ties that bind the two nations. And then he provides evidence of sort of his civilizational map happening, which is the 6 months of 1993, where he invites us to look at a snapshot in time, the events of the world that sort of fit his civilizational slots, and we'll go through them one by one. So in the former Yugoslavia, the fighting intensifies. It isn't just a civil war, it's a war between Croats, which are the Westerns, the Muslims, that were Islamic, and Serbs, that were Orthodox. The West fails to support the Bosnian Muslims with the same vigor it uses to denounce the Serbs. The Muslim world notices the double standards. Russia refuses to join the UN in pressuring the Serbs, because the Serbs are their Orthodox brothers. Meanwhile, Iran and other Vienna Human Rights Conference, a coalition of Islamic and Confucian states stands together. They reject Western universalism and defend cultural relativism. Military planners in NATO and Russia both begin to refocus their gaze. They aren't looking at each other anymore. They are looking at the threat from the south. The 2000 Olympics are awarded to Sydney over Beijing. The voting falls almost perfectly along civilizational lines. The US imposes sanctions on China for selling missile parts to Pakistan. China and the US clash over nuclear shipments to Iran. So Huntington's point is clear. If you look at these events through a state map or a one-world map, they seem like random sparks. But through the civilizational map, they are all part of the same fire. So in his conclusion, we end where we began. The idea that no paradigm lasts forever. The Cold War map was useful for 40 years. The civilizational map will eventually be obsolete too. But for now, in the 20th and early 21st centuries, it is our best guide. Huntington quotes the Canadian statesman Lester Pearson, who warned in the 1950s that it would be absurd to think that the new societies of the East would be replicas of the West. He predicted the revival of these ancient civilizations, and he leaves us with a final warning from the historian Fernand Braudel. Braudel tells us that it pays to know how to read the map, to know where the borders are, to know where the centers and peripheries lie, to know the air one breathes there, because if we don't, we will commit catastrophic blunders of perspectives. Sleep now. That is chapter 1 of Samuel Huntington's Clash of Civilization. There's quite a few more chapters that we'll look for in other videos. I'll probably go one by one through the chapters, but I hope this was good. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll start doing other books as well. But for now, we're going to be going through Huntington's Clash of Civilization. Thanks for watching, guys, and